Before I get to our program, I want to give you an idea of the makeup of the attendees. Over 260 people are signed up. That's quite an audience. That's more followers than I have on Twitter. We have participants from as far away as Lake Elmo, Minnesota, which is east of St. Paul, and Charlotte, North Carolina. Of course, there are employees from all of our wastewater utilities that are part of the 5 Cities Plus Consortium at Cincinnati, Columbus, Indianapolis, Louisville, St. Louis, Northern Kentucky, as well as from the Little Blue Sewer District in Missouri. We also have reps from 48 engineering firms that serve the various wastewater utilities in attendance here. Clearly, the plus in 5 cities is reaching farther and farther. Our agenda today. First, we'll hear from each executive director who will provide a 5-minute state of the utility update for us. Second, I will moderate a roundtable discussion with the directors, exploring topics that are on the forefront of all of our minds. Lastly, we'll have a live Q&A session. We're going to hold all questions until this part of the program, but if you have a question along the way, please click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and submit your questions there. Don't submit them in the chat, put them in the Q&A portion of the webinar. Now, you can do that again at any point in the program. So if your question is directed to a particular speaker and you'd like them to answer that, please indicate that in your submission. I will try my best to get to all the questions and to pose them to the appropriate speaker during our live Q&A session. I'm really looking forward to that. All right, without further ado, let's get into our program. The first State of the Utility update will be given by Diana Christie, Executive Director of the Metropolitan Sewer District of Greater Cincinnati. Director Christie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Reese, and thank you everyone for being here today. I'm really excited to talk to all of you and to have this opportunity while we wait to do our next in-person 5 Cities conference. As we said, I'm the director of the Metropolitan Sewer District of Greater Cincinnati. And while the last year and a half, we have spent a lot of time and energy managing and operating through the COVID-19 pandemic, I'd like to briefly highlight what else we've been doing because we have, of course, kept things running and operating throughout this time. So first, our consent decree. Cincinnati MSD, like many of the other utilities, is under a federal consent decree to reduce our combined sewer overflows and eliminate sanitary sewer overflows. And since 2004, this has really driven our budgets, our rates, and our capital program. I'm pleased to report that we have completed the first phase of our decree in our wet weather program, and that included 133 projects at a cost of just over $1 billion. And in that, and through that program, we eliminated 6 billion gallons annually of combined sewer overflows. That brought us down from 14 billion to 8. And with that, significantly improved water quality in local streams, including the Mill Creek, which at one time was named the most polluted stream in America. In our consent decree program in the first phase, our crowning achievement and what has gained a lot of attention has been our Lick Run Greenway. And we completed that. That is a 1-mile stream daylighting project that reduced CSOs by 800 million gallons annually. We did this by separating out the stormwater from the combined sewer system. And, if we were here this year, we would be showcasing this as part of our conference. So I do hope many of you have an opportunity to visit the Lick Run Greenway. It includes park-like amenities. Of course, we have a bioengineered stream running through it, features walking paths, biking paths, and recreational areas. And we've already been doing programming for the community. We actually had a 5K this year. So really been getting a lot of attention and really excited about the early success of that project. Some other highlights from our phase 1 was an enhanced high rate treatment facility and a number of other green projects, including stream restoration, storm detention basins, and bioswales. We're still negotiating the next phase of our consent decree. And so in the interim, we've been completing projects. We have not stopped work on our wet weather program. And one of the largest under construction right now is a new diversion chamber here at our largest facility, Mill Creek. And that will ultimately allow us to treat more flows during wet weather. So in addition to the consent decree, we've had some focus areas coming out of an affordability task force that was done several years ago. One of the recommendations that we put in place about 2 years ago was a low income assistance program called our Customer Assistance Program. And this is specifically for low income seniors. We have implemented a 25% discount on their bill, but the requirements is 65 and older. They have to be property owners and again, meet the low income threshold. That is a limitation for us as a county sewer district under the Ohio Revised Code. In addition, we're currently doing a feasibility study to implement or to do fee restructuring to address impervious surfaces. That feasibility study is underway and we expect to be making a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners by the end of this year. It would be still some time before something could be implemented if that recommendation is approved to proceed. Another area where we spent a lot of time and really been trying to pivot somewhat from what we've been doing is the sewer backup program. So our sewer backup program was one of the first or the first in the country that required us to respond and clean and pay damages for capacity related sewer backups. This program is required by our consent decree and it's primarily designed to address sewer backups after they occur or reactively. And to date, we've spent more than $138 million on this program. That includes all of our customer service, cleanup, claims, and then a prevention program. And in particular, we've been looking at that, that significant investment and what we are getting from it, and really asking ourselves, is this sustainable, and is this the way we should be addressing sewer backups? It would be nice if I could say that we've made significant progress in eliminating them, and we haven't. Our prevention program is also proactive. Individuals have already had a sewer backup when they are eligible for that program. So instead, we're really looking at modifying that approach or adding to it and finding new solutions. The other issue we have is about 85% of the sewer backups that are reported to us are not caused by the MSD public sewer system. They are caused by breakages or blockages in private sewers, or oftentimes surface water flooding misidentified as a sewer backup. So we're really taking a new look, trying to find ways to prevent, reduce, or mitigate sewer backups. And in some cases, this is education to private property owners regarding their own responsibility. What else we're doing? We're actually pilot testing localized flow control solutions in areas across our district where we could potentially reduce sewer backups just by, some minor operational controls. And we are doing a more advanced mitigation study that will identify watershed-based solutions that are not already part of our consent decree. And we are also, as I mentioned, enhancing our prevention program. We were able to access a FEMA grant this year where we have certain homes that we really do not have any solution to. They were built in an old stream bed. So in summary, addressing extreme storms is really, a challenge that we're experiencing in Cincinnati and probably most of the other cities on the call. The wet weather here is only getting more intense and more frequent. We've had 50 and 100-year storms repeatedly over the last few years. One this July that, caused a lot of community attention and attention from our elected officials. We did hold a community roundtable like this, where we had multiple agencies talking about the problems and what we could do and what we really couldn't do to address them. But we're really just trying to bring agencies and the community leaders together to start looking at things from a more holistic and broader perspective to identify solutions. So I think my time is probably up. I'm really excited to talk to you all today, and look forward to hosting in 2022. I'm going to be positive it's going to be in 2022. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Christie. The second State of the Utility update will be given by Adam Cheney, Executive Director of Northern Kentucky Sanitation District Number 1. Director Cheney, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Reese, for moderating, and I want to thank the 5 Cities Committee for putting the program on together. Angela at Louisville MSD, thank you very much for leading the group. I think without being together in person, this is an excellent alternative. So thank you all very much. I'm going to start by saying what our primary focus is right now, and that's our people. Without our people, we can't do anything. We are very fortunate in Northern Kentucky to have a very robust economy as far as growth. In the Northern Kentucky International Airport, Amazon has just recently opened an international hub, and depending on who you talk to, employment at that hub will be anywhere from 5,000 to 15,000 employees, which is great for the region. However, that causes some issues for us in an already strained labor market, which I'm sure you all are experiencing yourselves. So right now our focus is on attraction and retention, and that's coming in the form of compensation studies, benefits analysis, exit interviews, obviously with our employees, employee satisfaction surveys. So we're putting a tremendous amount of focus right now on our people. We want to invest in our employees for the long term through education and training, and really trying to make SD1 the most attractive place in the Northern Kentucky region for people to want to come and work. So I had to start with that because that is becoming one of our major issues and a driving factor in a lot of what we're experiencing now. And again, we can't do anything without our people, and the people we have are excellent. Some are on this call right now, and I want to thank them all for their participation today as well. You know, moving on, Christy mentioned, or Diana mentioned that her consent decree, SD1 Northern Kentucky recently renegotiated our consent decree to extend our timeline from 2025 to 2040, which is obviously a 15-year extension. We have rebranded our consent decree. We used to talk about the consent decree in a negative way. It was always an excuse for why we couldn't do things. It was always, you know, within the community, a negative talking point. It was something that the EPA was forcing us to do. So we kind of flipped the script on that, and we now have, through our marketing department, our communications department, thanks to Chris Cole here, we've developed what we call our Clean H2O 40, which stands for Clean Water by 2040. And we're talking about our consent decree in a positive way now within the community, and we're looking at it as an opportunity. We're talking about it in aspirational terms. We're talking about it in a way that benefits the community, not as an excuse and not as apologetic as it was before, but really putting a positive spin on it. And I think it has helped tremendously in our reputation within the Northern Kentucky community. As we all experience when you go out in the world for any you know, endeavor, you know, you want to talk negatively about something, you're going to get energy that's negative in return. Your reactions are going to be negative. If you go out and talk positively, you're going to get positive reaction and positive energy back. So we've kind of turned the tables on our consent decree. Instead of looking at it as an albatross around our neck, we're actually talking about it in positive ways. We're looking at the EPA as a partner, really, to help us achieve the goals that we have in common. We were very fortunate through our negotiation process to get a very flexible plan that allows us to, as technology evolves, to navigate the best, most efficient, least expensive solutions to overflow mitigation. So I'm very happy to say that that the negotiation is behind us. We have a long-term financial plan, and although we have 15 extra years, our goal is to beat those milestone metrics, which are actually 5-year increments within the consent decree, and hopefully get that thing done sooner rather than later. The last kind of point I want to make is a focus on our customer. It's always been a focus here at SD1. However, with the pandemic, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit later in the program, we wanted to find touchless ways, automated ways to reach our customer. It started even before the pandemic with a revamped website, a customer portal, and again, automation that allows the customer to have a better experience. You really can't talk about a customer experience without talking about rates, of course. And we are in the third year of a 4-year rate restructuring plan. And that rate restructuring plan actually took our base rate, our fixed portion of our bill, and increased it, was simultaneously reducing the variable rate. And what that does is helps mitigate the top line erosion of our revenues through a base rate increase and a less dependency on the variable rate. So for the first time in years, it used to be we would take a 5% rate increase and we would net top line revenue 4%, because even with the rate increase and growth, the consumption decline would erode our revenue, we would still be losing on a year-over-year basis. For the first time since I've been involved with SD1, last year we actually took a 5% rate increase, but netted a 6% top line revenue increase. And that was because the fixed rate helped offset consumption decline, but also our growth was enough to put us into the positive instead of to the negative on our rate structuring. So we're very happy with how that's worked out. We have one more year that's been approved through the fiscal courts here, which is our governing body as far as rates are concerned. And since it's been so successful, we will most likely look to do another 4-year program. When we did the math, when you count in your consent decree, your capital cost, our entire capital plan, 97% of every dollar that's spent at SD1 is fixed cost. It's not a variable cost. I mean, you don't even have to turn your water on or flush your toilet, and we've got to cover cost. And I think this relationship between fixed cost and variable cost, number one, makes a lot of sense. The fiscal courts understood that, and we had very favorable approval, and it's worked out very well. So we're going to continue on that road into the foreseeable future to try to get the cost of doing service, the cost of doing business, the service, to match the fee. So I think my time's allotted here too. So I apologize for taking more than I probably should have, but I appreciate being on and being able to talk with everyone. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Cheney. Appreciate your update. The third State of the Utility update will be given by Brian Holscher, Executive Director and CEO of the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District. Director Holscher, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Reese. I'll apologize ahead of time if you hear some hammering of concrete. That's our consent decree being done in our front porch. So it's a good thing. It's actually progressing. So they've stopped for now. Hopefully they'll stop for the next couple hours. I'm going to break down the update into 3 categories: governance, and then kind of things affecting our operating budget, things affecting our capital budget. On the governance side, MSD is managed by 6 appointed trustees. We've had a big changeover in those. The current 6 trustees, their current tenure consists of somewhere between 6 months and 2 years. So they're relatively new individuals. We've been doing a lot of things having to do with orientation and helping them understand what MSD does. The good side is there's a chance that MSD will have the same board members for the next 6 years. So it kind of bodes well for us in the future. So we recently went through a process as part of my contract review, going over some strategic planning and the idea of what's going on strategically at MSD for the next 3 or 4 years. It was a really good strategic discussion, had a lot of ideas bouncing back and forth, went through a lot of brainstorming sessions. Real good way to teach our particular charter what we're capable of doing and what we're not capable of doing. So we're looking forward to that. And on the governance side, at the same time, MSD can serve the city and county of St. Louis. We have had big turnover in there also. So we have a relatively brand new county executive who just got elected this past November. formally elected to complete a partial term, and he's up for election again at the end of 2022. And we've had a brand new mayor of the city of St. Louis who just got elected in the spring of 2021. And they've got some initiatives they want to push forward, trying to consolidate services between the two entities. So we're looking forward to cooperating with them. And I'll go into a little more details about those later. Real quick on the operating budget, during the pandemic, like everybody else, we had some impacts. On our operating budget, we lost about 5% of our revenues. We made the appropriate budget cuts to make sure we stayed within those revenues. We're getting right now to prepare what's our fiscal year 2023 budget. And I'm directing everyone to assume we've got one more year of this. We're just going to kind of be fiscally conservative and push as much stuff off and delay as much travel as we possibly can. But what's really coming up is our rate cycles are on 4-year cycles right now. The current rate cycle covers, we're in the second year of our current rate cycle from fiscal 21 to 24. This summer, we have to start developing our rate proposals for fiscal 25 through fiscal 28. And we're going to have a lot of discussions about what that looks like. What's your starting point? Obviously, our starting point's all messed up from some of the things we've had to do as part of the coronavirus. But also what's going to happen in the future with wage increases in that 25 to 28, inflation, construction costs, and just all those things. So we have to have a long discussion about that and make sure we do something that's realistic and we have some very defendable data that we put in front of our rate commission as far as what we want to do with rates in the future. Finally, on the capital budget, things are good. We're on budget. We're ahead of schedule. My engineering staff has done a great job of being very creative in ways to reduce costs because we are on budget and on schedule and haven't missed a single thing with EPA. They've accepted all the proposals we've moved forward with. It's been a very good relationship with Region 7. It's moving good. Right now, our consent decree ends in 2039, but we do have an interim deadline of 2023 that's really important around the SSO side. Again, things are looking good. We recently updated the cost of our consent decree back in 2010 in current dollars. We listed as 4.7. Right now, by the time we're done, it looks like it'd be about a $6 billion program by the time we reach the end of it. Finances look real good, tremendously good. Our Secretary of Treasury does a great job. We're the biggest user of SRF funds, and you guys who do that, we're getting less than 1% borrowed money. That's a wonderful thing. WIFI has worked well for us. We still maintained our AAA bond rating, so we do pretty good when we go out to the markets. And for the first time, we're actually getting offers from banks to set interest rates for advanced refunding of bonds 3-4 years from now, resulting in savings. And our goal is to save at least 10% on the cost of financing. And so that's the first thing we've been approached with. It's a pretty unusual creature, and for them to be proactively coming to us is good. It's really going to give us a lot of certainty in the future. Rates can't go down much more, but they could go up. And so if we can lock those things in, those work really pretty well. So those are the things I wanted to start off with. I know I'm near the end of my time, so Reese, pass it back to you.
Thank you, Director Holscher. Appreciate hearing about St. Louis and the good work that's going on there. The fourth state of the utility update will be given by John Newsom, Administrator for the Division of Sewerage and Drainage, Department of Public Utilities, City of Columbus. So Administrator Newsom, your turn.
Thank you, Reese. Good morning, everyone. First thing I'm going to hit on is our consent order update. Currently, we are well into our consent order. We updated our plan to change a little bit more to the collection system focus versus a tunnel program. Back in 2015, that program is going really well. It's called Blueprint Columbus. What that is, it's a comprehensive I&I mitigation plan in neighborhoods with green infrastructure to help with water quality features as well. Columbus is an MS4 community, so phase 1, that's part of my duties as the administrator is to handle that MS4 duty. So we do a 4-pillar approach with that. That's lateral lining, main lining, downspout redirection, and we do some work with sump pumps and so forth in houses and areas where we have those high I&I situations going on. And again, then we add green infrastructure lessons learned from other communities. Once you remove that water from the system, it's got to go somewhere. So we've added green infrastructure with some stormwater improvements to help with the water quality, help the receiving streams, and thereby helping with our TMDLs and again, our MS4 program here at the city. We've nearly wrapped up our first in neighborhoods, Clintonville. That's an area just north of OSU campus. The data is coming back. It's within the tolerances that we said we would meet in the SSO. This is, I should say, specific to SSO mitigation. We were in the tolerances that we informed the agency we would be able to achieve. So that's good news. We should be wrapping up that report next year to get that back to the agency, our consent orders with the state of Ohio, to make sure that we're in compliance with that consent order. We're actively in construction in another neighborhood. This would be on the northeast side of the city. We started construction on that this year. Seems to be going really well. Another one of those large projects, we did have another tunnel project. It's called our LOT project, which is an extension to our previous ORS tunnel. Those are acronyms. So I'll just say there are two large diameter tunnels. ORS was 20 foot. This is a 12-foot diameter tunnel. Goes from, continues up to the northern section of the city. Currently under construction. This is actually will help with our CSO as well. Completion 2025. We have two consent orders, our SSO, which is 2045 deadline, and our CSO, which is 2025. We will meet our 2025 deadline. This is the last of the large projects to handle that. We did do chemically enhanced primary treatment at our Southerly facility. We have two treatment plants. Southerly, which is the largest of the two. This gives us a capacity of 440 MGD wet weather. This provides an additional 110 MGD for wet weather conditions. We'll talk a little bit about this later in the program. We actually treated the largest amount of flows ever in the city of Columbus during the pandemic when I was under reduced staffing. So talk a little bit about the great work the staff did to meet that demand. The last piece I want to talk quickly about with our consent order was real-time control. This was something we agreed with the agency that we would focus on and implement in our system. We're well underway of this. There's still some kinks and so forth. We're still working out with the system, but we are getting real-time data up in the collection system. It's helping us make real-time decisions at our two plants. I should point out we have an interconnector that both plants can send flow. The smaller plant can send to the larger plant and allows us to maximize treatment using that real-time control technology. Some other things that we're doing out in the sanitary system, we have a HSTS elimination program. Columbus, when we started this program, had about 1,400 HSTSs. And again, going back to this MS4 piece, we had some issues with that. So we're extending sanitary service to these areas on HSTSs, eliminating them, and then thereby increasing our stormwater quality, and again, meeting the parameters within our MS4. A large diameter program is something we are also very proud of. We've had some folks from actually even international come and talk to us about this, what we do here. We do a very comprehensive approach. We do basically triage. We look at the status of the pipe, then we make a recommendation on what rehabilitation methods we want to do once that program's complete. Switching over to the stormwater collection system. So again, the MS4 is under my purview, is that we have update with the agency coming up this year. And we just update our stormwater drainage manual. It's a 250 some page document, very large, to help with development communities and so forth to help meet the requirements of MS4. Quickly to hit on what we're doing on the treatment side. We've started a cogen project at our Jackson Pike facility, and that's our 150 MGD plant. That started construction this year. We will use that for electricity there in the plant. Then our biosolids program, we are going in our 5th year, 100% reuse. So thank you.
Thank you, Administrator Newsom. A lot of great things going on in Columbus, and love to hear more about it. The 5th State of the Union, State of the Utility. I knew I was going to do that at least once. The 5th State of the Utility update will be given by Tony Parrott, Executive Director of the Louisville and Jefferson County Metropolitan Sewer District. Director Parrott, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Reese, and thank you everybody for joining in today. I will start by just recognizing and thanking the staff here in Louisville, Our staff, as all of you know, is the most valued asset that we have. And over the last 2 years, obviously been very tough in terms of providing the services that our communities need. And without the staff, we would not be able to do that. So a lot of thanks and gratitude goes out to our staff. And, you know, the other thing that I think we have to all think about also, particularly this year, all the utility relief money that's been available, either through the ARP funds, through the state, or other funds that may be coming in the future through the infrastructure bill. We were very partnering with the Louisville Water Company. We were able to get $6 million of utility relief money out to our customers, which really helped with customers who were in arrears and customers that needed to be put on payment plans. And so very proud of that accomplishment for the first time, bringing in a new technology to make that happen through Promise Pay. And that was very, very successful for the customers. And then from a community perspective, we implemented a community benefits program in our procurement of our capital projects. And that is a program where contractors, as a part of the contractor bid, can commit to a contribution to local nonprofits and schools. And since we kicked that program off last year, we've received over $1.3 million in community benefits commitments, and that is again benefiting the community. We've set up a community benefits advisory council to support and give us direction on how those funds should be used. We've also incorporated and upgraded our local labor utilization policy in our procurement to promote the utilization of local labor. For all our major projects, particularly those that are above $10 million, we are averaging about 70% local labor utilization on our capital projects, which is also benefiting the local workforce. You know, our community also has been through, in addition to the pandemic here in Louisville, a lot of different issues over the last year and a half, social issues, the Breonna Taylor tragedy that happened in our city. And so we have been really focused on how we can be more than just a utility. We want to be a community partner. That's why I agreed to chair a task force that was put together by our mayor to look at equity in contracting and procurement. And that task force is made up of members like Louisville Metro Government, Louisville Water Company, the Housing Authority, the University of Louisville, Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, Louisville Gas and Electric, JCPS, our public schools, and the Urban League, and chairing that task force to really look at how to address the tremendous gaps that exist in the utilization of Black-owned and diverse-owned businesses in our capital programs. Collectively, over the next 5 years, all the task force members will be spending $5 billion in capital. And so trying to figure out how we can put in more policies that are going to support the utilization of Black-owned and diverse-owned businesses and women-owned businesses and LGBT businesses as well, and disadvantaged businesses, because we need to make sure that we're building local contractor capacity to be able to do all the work we're doing in our city and in our state. A lot of the work that we're doing in Louisville obviously is encompassed around our consent decree. And our original decree was entered into in 2005. We amended it for the first time in 2009. In that first amendment, we were supposed to be wrapping things up in 2024, at the end of 2024. But a lot of things happened since the 2009 amendment. We had a major power outage at our Morris Forman treatment facility, which is our largest facility, in 2015, which led to a lot of operational issues and non-compliance issues at Morris Forman that required us to look at coming up with a corrective action plan through the state, which was identified to cost us $170 million. We also have a major biosolids replacement program that we just bid, and we're actually going to award next week, which is another $200 million project. And we have a flood protection system where we have enormous needs. We have 16 major flood protection pump stations, and we were able to get some Army Corps funding to start the work on our most critical flood pump station. So with Morris Foreman, the biosolids, and Patty's Run, we had to create some financial capacity or headroom to be able to do those projects now. And so we entered into negotiations with EPA to push our schedule out. We're pretty much completing all of our CSO work. So some of our SSO work is going to be pushed out so we can handle some of the priority needs that we have operationally at our Morris Foreman plant, and also some of our large diameter sewers. And a part of that agreement is also looking at us doing some $25 million a year in asset management work and another $70 million in large diameter sewers. So our new deadline is going to be 2035. And so we're going to do some of these priority projects so that we're able to do it within our bonding capacity and our rate making authority by our board, and manage the affordability of all the requirements that we have to do. So we're very confident that the requirements included in the second amended decree and also the amendment that we did to our integrated overflow abatement plan will be reasonable and address our greatest assets and needs over the next 10 years. And then finally, we've been focused on expanding our service area through regionalization. And we have acquired sewer systems in the city of Crestwood, Oldham County, and getting ready to close a deal next week in Bullitt County. And we're also entering into an interlocal agreement to provide services in Shelby County to a women's prison, and negotiating some deals to do some operation of private systems down in Spencer County. So a lot going on, but I'll just kind of leave it at that.
Thank you, Director Parrott. Great to hear about your expansion efforts as well as your community engagement efforts. That's really impressive. Thank you. The last state of the utility update will be given by John Tripas, Director of Underground Engineering and Construction, Citizens Energy Group, Indianapolis, Indiana. Director Tripas, your turn.
Thank you, Reese. And thanks for everyone for joining and the Five Cities team throughout the pandemic. We met frequently, quarterly, to discuss different challenges we've all experienced and shared information. And it was very helpful, kind of culminating ultimately in this virtual event. I'd just like to give everyone a little update and reminder of about Citizens Energy Group. So we are a multifaceted utility. So not only do we have responsibility for the wastewater system in Indianapolis, we also have responsibility for the water system, our natural gas distribution system, thermal system, basically a steam system in the downtown area, as well as a separate chilled water system. As a greater organization, we also operate gas distribution facilities, water and wastewater for the city of Westfield. We are a public charitable trust, so every business is regulated through the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission. However, some of our businesses in Westfield, we do generate a profit, where most of our other regulated business throughout Marion County and Indianapolis do not have a profit. But part of our mission under a state charter is any profit we do generate, we actually put that back in to benefit the inhabitants of Marion County and Indianapolis to various social programs, help with bills, a variety of other ways that we try to reach out to our customers and maintain our engagement and support challenges like we experienced in the pandemic when we did get reduction in some of the revenues. Of course, some of our ratepayers had concerns and challenges paying bills, and we worked with them to the extent we could to maintain service throughout that time period. And things have improved very much since then regarding overall revenues received and viability of our capital program. I primarily focus on our wastewater program, so I'll touch base on that for the most part. what we're covering there. Our general collection system is fairly substantial. So like some other cities, we are a Unigov city. So we have about 3,200 miles of wastewater collection system, over 70,000 manholes in our system, 270 lift stations, dozens of river crossings, and then 2 major wastewater treatment plants, both advanced wastewater treatment plants, fully upgraded and expanded within the past 10 years to basically handle flows from our consent decree, much like the other utilities on the call. We have a consent decree. We are still on schedule to be completed with our overall consent decree in 2025. So we're getting into our last 4 years or so of getting everything together. Our 2 plants, our Belmont Advanced Wastewater Treatment Plant is upgraded to handle 300 million gallons per day of flow during wet weather. And our more southerly plant, the Southport plant, will handle up to 250 million gallons per day. Both plants have been performing exceptionally. We were been awarded the Peak Platinum Award for over the past 5 years, no NPDES permit violations by the National Association of Clean Water Agencies. In fact, our Southport plant, this is our 16th year of being named that award and 7th year for our Belmont plant. A little on our consent decree. It's primarily a deep tunnel system that consists of 28 miles and 6 segments that are coming together. We've had the first 11 miles online since 2017 and have since then collectively captured about 2.5 billion gallons that have been pumped and treated in our system as opposed to going to the waterways. The section we currently have that will come online at the end of this year is our White River and Lower Polk section. It's about another 8 miles. And we'll add about another 500 to 600 million gallons per year of flow that we will capture. Our remaining 2 segments, which just in the order the tunnel was built, is our Fall Creek segment and Pleasant Run segment. Fall Creek segment has actually been mined. We are working to make those surface connections now over the next 3 years. The Pleasant Run section is currently in mining, and that is anticipated to be online in mid-2025 prior to the end of our program. We were excited last year. We were approved for our use attainability analysis. So we had discussions with our local IDEM and the EPA regarding that for many years. And it worked well that everything came together and we were awarded that UAA, which gives us some security and continuity as we finish out the remainder of our $2 billion program. One more key thing to mention, just recently, we were awarded the 2021 Tunnel Achievement Award by Tunnel Business Magazine for Project Excellence for our Dig Indy program. So we were proud, our team, of that accomplishment as well. Thank you, Reese.
Thank you, Director Tripus. Congratulations on many awards that you shared with us today. Great work going on in Indianapolis. So great. We've heard a little bit about each of the 6 metropolitan areas. We are now going to have a panel discussion aimed at learning from each other what we've gained from the pandemic that we've all been facing, as well as what the future holds for our various organizations. So the format of this is we have 4 questions, and we're going to ask the various utility directors to answer them. And our first question is, what were your top 3 concerns for providing continuity of service during the global pandemic? And how were those concerns mitigated? All right. So I'm going to turn to St. Louis first. Director Holscher, what were your top concerns for providing continuity of service? And how were those concerns mitigated?
Well, Reese, thank you. I'm assuming everybody has the same problem as me, is trying to figure out what the top 3 of the big list was. But so I clued in on 3 of them. One was public communications. MSD has been closed to outside attendance for quite a while. That includes our board meetings and committee meetings. We broadcast all of our meetings, and we allow the public to participate in writing and by actually viewing the broadcasts. It has worked well. As imagine some of you can picture, not having people be able to stand at a microphone sometimes better directs and give you some, really helps you get to some of the issues much quicker. And so that's kind of what we've realized. Right now, our plan is to keep that system in place at least till the end of the calendar year. That's the decision. Senior staff and our board has agreed to do that. What we've done is really beefed up our social media efforts. It happened to coincide with a planned increase in individual municipal outreach and organizational outreaches anyway. Our service area has St. Louis County as well, about 90 municipalities in it. And so we're really going to accelerate that, primarily wrapped around some service changes we're requesting and votes that were coming up. So it actually meshed pretty well. We had multiple reasons to be increasing the way we communicate electronically. Everybody seems to be adapting to the virtual meetings. We are being asked to go to meetings virtually to the municipalities in our service area. So that seems to be working pretty well. Kind of just as a measuring point, we did have a large election in 2021. The public by over 70% approved bonds for our next 4 years for the capital program. We do every 10 years review our charter and have some charter changes. All 5 changes passed by 60 to 55%. That was good. And I know talking with some of the folks who are actually running this today, talking about where we go, I think one of the things we've learned is all of this virtual communication will always remain a part of our communications, even after the pandemic's gone. But you do need to still add on the face-to-face for some folks who really want to participate that way. Second part, staff safety. I know a lot of other organizations hearing what people went through. We were pretty lucky. MSD in St. Louis area really didn't go through any kind of spike or issues in the spring of 2020 with the pandemic. We did put some major things in place, just like everybody else. Masking, virtual meetings, if at all possible. We reduced the density. We still got our density at our offices reduced to about 50% of normal capacity, alternating that with working at home. Places for field staffs for make sure we're staggering starts, limiting access to office places. Pretty aggressive contract tracing. Right now, we've identified since spring of 2020, about 15% of our workforce has tested positive at one time or another over the past 18 months. We most recently, similar to the city of St. Louis and the county followed after that, put in a mandatory testing program. So if you're vaccinated, you don't have to participate. If you aren't vaccinated, we are asking you to get tested once a week and provide us a negative test. So where we can stand right now, the staff's actually reacted pretty well to it. We've got a little more than 80% of our staff is fully vaccinated. About 18% are participating regularly in the testing program. And then there is those couple of handful of folks that we are working with that are trying to make a decision about where they want to go with these new rules. So we're getting through it. We are actually positive about the reaction we've gotten from the staff. They do a very good job here. We've been very clear to them about what it is we're trying to accomplish, and that's been very helpful. Finally, and I talked about this a little bit and probably I'm duplicating, and I apologize for that, on operating budget. Again, just kind of looking at what are we going to do? Again, like everybody else, we kind of trim back some of the expenses. Our fiscal year 2021, which ended this past summer, we're kind of in full COVID mode as far as reducing expenses. I allowed the staff to go to kind of a 50% COVID mode this fiscal year, which ends in the summer of 2022, kind of assume things can start being spent in the first half of calendar 2022. And then just looking at what's going to happen, what I hope Diane is right about what's going to happen with COVID. But I think what we decided is we're going to kind of do that 50-50 model. We're going to assume, we're going to budget next year as though we were in COVID for half the year and not in COVID for the other half. And it's kind of a nice conservative model, and just make sure we prioritize and push things off and only spend money on what we really want to spend. Hopefully we know what's going to happen, but I'm positive we don't know what's going to happen, whether it's good or bad. So that's just kind of a conservative way that we're approaching that item.
Oh,
Those are the three
well
reasons.
put. Well put, Director Holster. Thank you. Director Christie, same question to you. What were your top concerns for providing continuity of service in Cincinnati, and how were those concerns mitigated?
Thank you, Reese. Yes, and I took this question and kind of went back to where we were last March in 2020, and you know, really what we were all dealing with at the time and how we managed that. And so my top 3 concerns that I was going to focus on were really in Director Holscher already mentioned this, but keeping people safe. And that was number one, keeping our workers healthy. And then number two, keeping our workers productive, which I'll touch on what I mean there. And then number three was really keeping our facilities operating and properly stocked with supplies. So I think the first is, similar to what we just heard, but we all had certain things that we were dealing with and managing in our own utilities. Here in Cincinnati, keeping people safe initially was a call to just spread out. And so, the first thing we were doing was just making sure that everybody had proper distance to do their jobs. And that wasn't always easy. We were fortunate for office space that we could spread out. And actually, initially, we kept people in the offices. And we had the proper distancing, but when we were looking at our crews and our operators and some of our maintenance staff, we had to be more creative. We created a lot of makeshift workspaces and and shops and used different conference rooms and really to spread people out. I think he also mentioned staggering start times, so that was really important for a lot of our crews. We typically would have 70 to 100 crews show up at the same time, use the same clock, all gather and have their kickoff meeting before they went out on their assignments for the day. That obviously was not a good practice to continue. And so we, in addition to staggering arrival times, we added locations for people to arrive and clock in, and we adjusted those early meetings and how we started our days. Of course, we eliminated all non-essential meetings, all training, all travel. And really just, encouraged everyone to do everything by phone until we got more comfortable with doing virtual calls and meetings. We discouraged ride sharing, which was a really odd thing to start doing, and told people to ride one per vehicle and discouraged carpooling. But that really has been something we've been carrying through. Really, just recently adjusting that a bit. And then we did also eventually reduced our work hours and went to an AB shift for a period of time. So this was not only those individuals that could work from home, but a lot of folks that, including our maintenance staff, we went to an AB shift. So we had reduced staff on site doing the work that really was essential work, but because of the inability to spread out and also the desire to protect our workforce. So we'd have some people at home for a whole week. And if there was an outbreak, kind of that protection that we were putting in place when things were really still early and so unknown. We even prepared a pretty elaborate contingency plan, not knowing what would happen and, thinking we could start seeing significant reductions in our workforce, whether due to people being ill or more quarantines. So we had, 75% staffing in our treatment facilities, down to 50, down to 25, and what we would do. And there we really identified some critical shortages in staffing, and in particular with our operators. We knew we were already short-staffed, but when we really looked at what we would do to manage this, it became pretty critical. And one of the mitigating measures, in addition to coming up with a contingency plan where we looked at those people who could work under a licensed operator, they had some training. We also are a member of Ohio WARN, which is a Ohio utility network, and we knew that there were neighboring utilities, that there was discussions about how we could all help one another if that happened. We even talked about isolating healthy staff to sections of a facility or locking in. None of that ended up happening, I'm happy to say. So we didn't get to that worst case scenario. We did have, and we have still had, a lot of our workforce being impacted by the virus and being out or quarantined. But we never got to those really critical operational staffing levels. And finally, we moved off of that AB schedule and instead placed all individuals who could work from home went and worked from home. So that was, we all had that in place until this past summer. And the city of Cincinnati, all of our workforce was required to return to the office. So we had remote work in place for quite a long time. we are actually also in the early stages of our mandatory testing policy. So not going to get into too much detail about that, but similar to what St. Louis is doing, although I don't believe we are getting the same positive reaction. So that was interesting to hear. And my other two that I mentioned are a little bit, I'll be a little quick on this. Again, keeping people productive was a big concern, not only when we sent people home, but also, in terms of what we were doing, if we were reducing staffing levels, what were we focusing on at the time, and or were we taking care of the essential work? So we really did kind of have to evaluate anything that could be maybe look at it. Sampling, for instance, was something where we said we had to cut out certain elective sampling, cut out certain investigations or postpone them because we really wanted to keep those more lean staff and crews. And so we really adjusted a fair amount of our work. The other area that we spent a lot of time evaluating was our maintenance. So we really looked at our maintenance management and reprioritized what we could do during this time if we weren't going to have everyone working the same schedules as they generally did. So of course we focused on more of the emergencies and the must-dos, and and put off a fair amount of our planned maintenance work. Ultimately, again, we did not keep that alternating work week in place for too long because it really just wasn't sustainable. So I think we all experienced that. The other key thing, probably the most important thing for keeping people productive, was creating a COVID task force. And I think someone else mentioned this, but this was a really difficult time for all of us as managers to know everything that was changing and implement these new practices. And we were meeting daily, and I had a key team, a very integral team, and Reese was part of that. And we had to really come together and then figure out how to communicate to all of our staff in a new way. And so that was a big change for us and something that we've carried through. Finally, also on the keeping people productive, I'm sure we all experienced, a newfound appreciation for remote work. And here in Cincinnati, the city of Cincinnati really, took a big step to allow us to be remote and to work from home by purchasing equipment and that allowed us for the bandwidth that was necessary for everybody to work from home and to access our networks. We did not have that. We didn't have anything like that. So that was a very key component of keeping people productive. And finally, I mentioned keeping our facilities and our operators really stocked with the supplies they need. And at the time, PPE was a huge issue for us, and things that we needed every day just to do our work, we were unable to purchase. And so those were things like sanitizer, masks, gloves, and the city of Cincinnati was also centralizing and requiring us to purchase in bulk, so that we couldn't make our own purchases as the utility. We had to be part of an order that came from all of the city of Cincinnati. So in time that worked out for us, but it was quite a challenge in the beginning. And one of the things we did at that time was we actually at one point were making our own sanitizer in our labs to distribute to all of our operators and throughout our facilities, and collecting and reusing all of those bottles. So glad we're past that point, but really quite the learning experience from an operational perspective. So that's it.
Thanks, Director Christie. I want to turn to Columbus, just upstate a little bit. Administrator Newsom, what were your top concerns for providing continuity of service, and how did you mitigate those?
Yeah,
Sorry,
thanks,
yours.
Reese. Yeah, all good. Thanks, Reese. I'd say similar to Brian and Diana, same thing. It's keeping folks safe, staff safe while meeting those needs of the ratepayers. Similar type protocols. A lot of virtual. I was a little concerned, honestly, early on. It was new for us. I was worried about broadband, so forth, being able to do as many virtual meetings as we were able to accomplish, but we got there. Critical. We had frequent meetings, still embracing them. I agree with Brian totally that this is going to be a platform that it's the right tool for the right circumstances, and we'll use this going forward. That was a big change for us. Similar to what Brian and Diana said, staggered shifts. We even had time clocks assigned to make sure that those that were clocking in were not at the same clocks that folks were clocking out, to try to isolate folks best we can. Similar to Cincinnati, we did have a contingency plan to have staff stay on site. Those that were, keep folks safe if the virus really spread throughout the community. We did have some spikes in Columbus. Fortunately, we did not have to go to that plan with trailers, mobile homes, so to speak, there on site to house folks, to keep them there on site. Similar with the vehicles, a lot of our engineering staff, majority of engineering staff was home. So we were able to assign some of the engineering vehicles out to staff to keep them one per vehicle. One of the concerns was with sending folks home, how we would maintain our project deadlines and so forth. Zero issue with that. We've maintained our consent order deadlines. We've met our project timelines and have moved forward with that. And it's talking about the vaccine and so forth. We do have proposals to, and again, the utility is actually part of Columbus proper. There's proposals to the unions on a compensation for those that can prove that they're being vaccinated. So that is currently in the union's hands. I do not believe those have been signed off by the unions, but we expect that to happen here, hopefully by the end of the year, where those that prove they got a vaccine, they will get monetary compensation for doing so. Another big concern I have is delay to construction projects, particularly at our treatment plants. Again, we talked a little bit about SEP was still ongoing, so that was one of our consent order projects. And they're a little bit different from the collection system. I've got operators, I got maintenance folks that are still there, and I've got contractors that need to work, and we were hoping they still work. So what we did, we came up with basically a form using the city policy on COVID restrictions and check-ins and so forth. It was filled out weekly. The contractor would fill that form out, say what areas they would be in, provide some type of communication, usually radios with our operations staff. So if they need to be in a certain area, they could radio in, wearing masks and so forth. Those forms are signed off all the way up to administration. So I signed many of those forms myself. So if there was complete buy-in communication from operations up to administration, making sure we're on the same page. And again, key behind that, I say delay to construction projects, but really was keep our operations staff safe and keep them isolated from contractors. Great communication. Again, everyone bought into it, and still actually using them today, and no contract delays. The last piece I want to talk about, and I'll probably talk a little bit more about this later, was a wet weather response. So going back what Diana said earlier, we're starting to see here in Columbus quite a bit more extreme weather events. And we actually had 2 of those hit during the midst of the pandemic, both in March and May, when most folks were home, and was concerned about how we respond to that. So some of the things we did with the staff, we extended shifts to make sure that we had full coverage, again keeping that isolation in mind. Then we had an on-call system as well. So our sewer maintenance folks, we had those on 12-hour shifts, and we had them like, you're still, even though you're not here, you're on call. So if we need you, we will call and expect attention to come to the work site and be ready to work. So those are 3 things. I went through those quick, and again, hopefully have some questions at the end. Be glad to answer.
Great. Thanks, Administrator Newsom. Appreciate hearing your answers. So we're going to move on to our second question. Our second question is, what are the top 3 things you're most proud of related to how your staff responded during the pandemic? And we're running a little behind on time. So I'm going to ask that each of our speakers, or each of our panelists, I'm going to ask you if you could hit one, hit your biggest one, maybe go into the second, but just want to keep us on schedule a little bit. So I'm going to turn to Louisville first. Director Parrott, you're up first. What are the top 1 or 2 things maybe that you're most proud of? I'm sure you're really proud of your folks, but how they responded during the pandemic.
Well, I think, there's several, but, within our operation division, those were the staff that really were the essential employees that had to show up every day, and going through all the protocols and, the staggered start times and all those things that they were first to respond to a lot of different issues and experiencing a lot of different things that they have never experienced before. most proud of that. But I guess the most enlightening thing is despite all that, we were able to see an increase in productivity despite all those measures that we had to put in place. And then secondly, as part of the year, we launched our new strategic business plan called Blueprint 2025. And under that plan, there was really a focus on how we could mature the organization's business practices and how we could really foster a culture open to evolving, experimenting, and innovating from a utility perspective, and making an opportunity out of a problem or a challenge, turning a challenge or a problem into an opportunity to transform the utility. And we were able to do that by implementing a new organizational performance management framework and as a part of our strategic plan. And that was designed directly to create a line of sight between individuals, frontline employees, and the organization's overall goals and objectives, and making sure that everybody is aligned in terms of from top to bottom, and making sure that we're moving forward in lockstep and achieving a high level of success in each division, each department, and each team, and tying all that into individual employees' performance goals, and making sure that we were not only meeting the mission of the organization, but we were growing our individual staff. And we've made so much progress despite the pandemic, and we're very proud of that.
Thanks, Director Parrott. I'm going to turn over to Indianapolis next and ask same question to you, Director Tripus. What are the top one or two things that you're most proud of related to how the staff at Citizens Energy Group responded during the pandemic?
Therese, I would echo a lot of things that Director Parrott just talked about regarding our staff and their commitment to performing, even despite these new challenges that were never experienced before interaction with our customers, and still delivering high quality and reliable service throughout the city. As I mentioned earlier, we are a multifaceted organization, and our President and CEO, Jeffrey Harrison, rolled out a program a little earlier before the pandemic called One Company, One Culture. And again, I think this echoes a little bit what Director Parrott had talked about, was trying to get us to not work in silos as we started working remotely and having less interactive face-to-face meetings, different ways we could all pull together to help the different divisions. For example, even if I'm focused on the wastewater side, we could find ways to work with our energy division or the water division, just to how we could collaborate and work a bit better together. There's 30 different departments within Citizens Energy Group, so there was a lot of opportunities for us to maintain work together through public communications, a variety of things in our regulatory groups, legal groups. So it was a really good plan that I think a lot of people have embraced, and it keeps to mature since then over the years. And really tied with that, I'd say probably a second one, just a highlight is our focus and refocus on diversity and inclusion, basically prioritizing our workforce diversity, looking for other inclusion and engagement opportunities with our workers in all facets of our workforce. It has been really exciting to see and watch that develop, and then heightening and just paying attention to diversity and inclusion within our culture.
Thanks, Director Tripus. I'm going to turn over back to Columbus to ask this question one last time. Administrator Newsom, what are the top one or two things that you're most proud of related to how your staff responded during the pandemic?
Sure, I'm gonna rattle off a few here, but I'll spend time on one, a little bit more detail. So
all right.
One thing that we really took ownership of was a statewide COVID initiative. Cincinnati, I know, was involved in this as well, where us as the utility actually were meeting with kind of taking the lead with the city health, county health, other folks with the state, talking about how we were doing that initiative. And actually through that work, we actually were highlighted once by Governor DeWine during one of his press conferences based on the work and communication we had done that. And staying with the communication piece, the support that we provided each other. Those were anyone that's been through this, and we all have very stressful times. And, even going to, setting up some EAP sessions just for the senior staff here, just to talk about those stressors in life. Folks are staying home, kids aren't doing activities and so forth, and just make sure we're supporting each other and looking proud of each other, because those were some trying times. The one I do want to spend a little bit of time on was, and I mentioned in my previous response was our wet weather response, which occurred back in March 20th, May 19th of 2020. So we are in the midst of the pandemic, a lot of unknowns. Most of my staff had been sent home at that time. Even operations, we had reduced staff significantly to keep them safe, to keep them away from the virus. And 2 historical rain events. We had a 25-year to 100-year rain event both these days in our collection system, our treatment plants. The first day, the March date, we had over 3,500 calls into our call center. The May date, we had over 4,000 calls into our time, and that's over a 24-hour time period. A handful of folks here called people in, they responded. We got back to all those calls within 2 days, a little bit beyond our KPI, but most folks were understanding, knowing that how we responded, and we're responsive when we got those calls. That May date was the second time in the last, we'll say 20 years, that our flood wall needed to be implemented. The first time since 2005. The river stage was up to a point, it was in the top 10 of the history of monitoring the Scioto River, which goes through our city here. Responded to need to get that flood wall up again with limited staffing. We called staff in. We put 2 portions of that up in under 4 hours, which is well beyond the KPI for getting those measures in place. So kudos to staff for stepping up, taking it serious. When we called them, they responded, they were here, and they did so. Our treatment plants, going back to our chemically enhanced primary treatment, treated the largest amount of volume in the history of the city. Now we had that facility. Again, limited staffing, 590 MGD of treated flow Columbus provided in that May event. So again, kudos to the treatment staff, kudos to collection staff. Last thing I want to talk about is our Project Dry Basement program, which is a program to address WIBs. Typical year, we have 60 of those. Today, or that day, we had 783 WIB complaints come in. So an average year of 60, we get 783. Give a shout out particular Tim Naeem that runs that program. I think he was in here long hours to make sure that those packets were getting out to folks, making sure that we were responsive. It has taken some time. We've got contractors that do that work for us. We've added, we actually put another bid out to get that backlog completed. And I'm happy to say all those have now been completed about 18 months after the fact, I understand. But again, such a huge demand, and we've taken care of 783 residents WIB issues by putting sump pumps and backflow preventers in those systems. So that's it, Reese. Thank you.
Thanks, Administrator Newsom. And I know the other directors are very proud of their people and how they responded. But we're going to move on to our third question now, and starting to look a little bit more forward. Our third question is, what were the top 2 or 3 innovations that your utility implemented during the pandemic that will make your organization stronger or more effective or more resilient? So I'm going to turn to Northern Kentucky first. And so Director Cheney, I'll ask you, what were the top 2 or 3 innovations that your utility implemented during the pandemic that will make you stronger, more effective, or more resilient?
Thank you. The number one thing that we did through the pandemic was automate as much as possible. We were on a path to try to get paperless, touchless to begin with because it's more efficient. But what happened was the pandemic really accelerated those efforts, and our staff, saw that as a challenge. Our IT staff particularly did a great job, not only on the external from a customer standpoint, but from the internal in our own processes. So just a couple things on the customer side, and these are all things that used to be done either through paper or some other process, but excuse me, all of our line locates now come through the website, get through a workflow, are processed internally. It's all automated. Stormwater permit requests, credit applications on the stormwater side have now become all automated. Certified Tapper program. All of the tools for our certified tappers are online now. They don't even have to come in. We don't have a lot of interaction. Easement requests are all online, plan submittals. So everything that we can do and could do from a customer standpoint, we're trying to make touchless. Again, these are all things that we had talked about doing, but the pandemic really accelerated a lot of that, and happy to say that it's worked out well. I'm just gonna, somebody mentioned earlier, these are things that are going to, make us better for the long term, even after the pandemic. But, just briefly touching on some internal processes, we like to process map out everything in our, just in our lean SD1 efficiency plans, and anywhere we had a touch point, we tried to automate or make that paperless or touchless. So, again, these are things that used to be done through an antiquated kind of, snail mail, internal mail type of transaction. Account adjustments from the customer service group to accounting is now all automated through a workflow process. Our onboarding now has been automated. Project planning and review, all automated through a SharePoint site, which is very convenient. Safety training is now all online. Our purchasing bids, this is an area where we were working in that direction a lot. We're almost there, but now we're accepting bids on the online portal through Quest. So, excuse me. What's funny about all that is that once we created the kind of backbone for the forms through Laserfish and Lucity, which is our management programs, and one department figured out a way to automate their process, other departments started seeing the efficiencies, and actually now we have a backlog through IT with requests for different online forms and different processes that we're now trying to get to automate. So overall, the pandemic, the silver lining for us is that things that we had set some goals for really got accelerated. Last thing I'll say about this is, the resiliency part. I think Diana mentioned that we were in the beginning really not sure how this was going to affect us. So we had to plan for the worst, right? Or how much staff is going to be here. So our business continuity planning was really ramped up. All our backups as far as data was concerned, documentation, making sure our SOPs were clear enough so that if we were short staffed and we had a skeleton crew, that those folks who stepped in were versed in the SOP and our documentation. Disaster recovery was part of that program. Cybersecurity is part of that program as well. I mean, I think it's in somewhat to do with the pandemic, but also in response to the world we live in today. And I can tell you, we're about ready to go out for some bonds ourselves. And the rating agencies were very intent this time on asking questions about our cybersecurity issues. So for those of you who haven't experienced that yet, it's a hot topic right now. So if you're going to look to go out for any bonding, the rating agencies really honed in on that topic when we sat down with them. So have plenty more, but I don't want to take up time. So I'll turn it back over to Reese.
Well, that's a great nugget there, going to the bond market and having them asking about your cybersecurity. That's a great learning and sharing. Thank you, Director Cheney, for sharing that. So I'm going to turn over to Indianapolis and ask Director Tripas, same question. What were the top 2 or 3 innovations that you guys implemented during the pandemic that will make your organization stronger, more effective, or more resilient?
Yeah, thinking of the innovation, it's such a thoughtful question, and there's a lot of areas we have created dozens of innovations, but I think I want to focus this question really on humans and our staff and the innovations they provide, and definitely looking at talent management throughout the organization. Like a lot of organizations, aging workforce, some of the changes during the pandemic, and how do we keep attracting and retaining top talent in the organization to really carry us into the next generation. One of the items we rolled out last year was called our Pipeline Resource Hub. And we rolled it out to 30 different departments, really created an understanding of all of our different departments. So as we have cross-functional relationships, or one company, one culture, that people can migrate between the different departments and lead to a career path that they might not see easily previously. Identified our current job openings more clearly and available to everyone within the organization. Highlighted some of our benefit packages, tuition reimbursement programs, focusing on how these can help people develop more within the organization, obtain other positions they might be interested in. We created virtual tours of a lot of our facilities, our water and wastewater treatment plants. We have virtual 3D tours of our tunnel system. You can basically fly in our deep tunnel as if you were a bird and pan around and see some of that information on YouTube. It wasn't only helpful with our customers. I think a lot of people across function our utility, get to see some of those things that maybe they're not paying attention to or available to them every day. We also developed and expanded what we call our Citizen Success Academy. And that's an online portal basically for a variety of training. I believe we have over 400 different units of training, including some of our mandatory safety training, as well as training in a lot of different areas, be it on computer applications or just several different components of someone's job that they could learn and take courses on and maintain and obtain credits. Probably lastly, we've also allowed people to send information in an interest form. So if there is something they're looking to know, they can do this anonymously through our human resources department to gain an understanding and get more information on that. Probably the second component we rolled out last year, which is a great program, again, more personal innovation related, is our Neighborhood Ambassador Program. So we've looked at strategic areas throughout Indianapolis where there is development or redevelopment happening. And we recognize our utilities are just one component of the overall plan. So we've identified people and in some cases teams that coordinate this ambassador program, engage with publics in those areas, leaderships in some of those communities. Our infrastructure might be there as well. It's part of that redevelopment, but it's created a good synergy really with some of the community leaders in different areas, especially with redevelopment, as that's growing substantially, not only in Indianapolis, but our surrounding counties. It's been a good benefit to really engage and understand a little more than how utilities fit into that puzzle, but that we're just a piece of it.
Thanks, Director Tripus. Appreciate hearing those innovations. Very neat. I'm going to ask one more time this question to Director Christie here in Cincinnati, and share with us what were the top 2 or 3 innovations you implemented here in Cincinnati that makes us stronger and more effective or more resilient?
Thank you, Reese. Yeah, so I think, the number one, we probably all have experienced, both at work and throughout our lives and that is the use of virtual meeting platforms like we're doing today. I mean, it really is just a huge step forward in terms of how we all can connect and how we can do our business a bit more productively. I think I personally am happy that we're not doing everything virtually anymore, but but it really is an effective way to bring our teams together without everyone, gathering at the same location and having to drive or travel to that place. It's as someone already mentioned, it's a great way to conduct training and to reach a larger audience, internally. We've also, really learned a lot about some of the tools that are available in these platforms, particularly the MS Teams is what we've been using a lot. And that's really just, there really are a lot of efficiencies and tools there that, as we've started using them more, it's more than just the actual meeting itself. It's that ongoing team location for document sharing, for communicating, just with messaging, and then connecting that through to our apps like Power BI, where we can create visuals and reports. So I'd have to say that, for us, that's probably the number one in terms of just something that, it's not, well, certainly we didn't create it here at MSD, but it certainly is probably the biggest tool and change coming out of the pandemic in a positive way. Kind of a more nuanced IT solution, but I think is illustrative of some of the innovations that we did put in place ourselves was when we were needing to have all of our employees do health assessments and again, going back to that, keeping our staff safe every day when they did come to work, we had to, verify that we really were required to kind of go through a checklist of whether you who had any symptoms or had been in contact with anyone. And we also had a temperature check requirement. But the system self-assessment was something that we really needed to find a way to track that and to confirm it was being done. And we ended up utilizing our Kronos, our timekeeping system, for everyone when they entered the work each day to log in and also to complete that task. So it was a really simple way to not add time and not add, a whole nother, record keeping system. But then from that, we also were able to connect that through to our Power BI and generate reports so that the supervisor, whoever it was that was responsible for making sure that that was done, could just easily see that. And so those kind of workflows and those kind of solutions, we really, that's one example, but we really have been, I think just finding these new ways of creating automated workflows. And this is just an example of how to quickly survey your employees on, on something and then see the results. So again, it really opened our eyes to using these dashboards and collecting and analyzing data from our employees directly. And then lastly, I wanted to mention that here in Cincinnati, we've been working with US EPA as other utilities have, but in the statewide monitoring program of our wastewater sampling. And this was, really to look at the wastewater as an early sign and early detection of COVID-19 and of course other pathogens. But this is something that in Cincinnati, we have a US EPA research lab co-located at our Mill Creek facility. So I think we were an early guinea pig of this effort and started before it became a statewide program that others probably are participating in. So we started back in May. It got refined and I think became a statewide program in July of 2020. And it's something that will be ongoing and I think be utilized going forward as these sampling technologies are improved. And the ability to track and respond quicker, I think is something, I think a lot of people that don't know much about wastewater and utilities heard about this and we're pretty intrigued by the stories. So that's it for us. I think that was my top three. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Director Christie. And so we're going to, thanks everybody for providing some of those innovations and hopefully we can learn from each other and all be working our way out of the pandemic mode smarter, more effective, and more resilient because we know it is going to come again sometime, maybe in a different form. But all those things that we've learned, all those innovations can serve us more into the future. But we're going to turn to our fourth question. This is our last question for this panel period. The fourth question is, what are your top three areas of organizational focus moving forward? Here we are in late 2021, but into 2022. So we're trying to turn the corner, turn the conversation to be looking forward. So I'm going to turn to Northern Kentucky first and ask Director Cheney to answer this. What are your top three areas of organizational focus moving forward, most specifically into 2022?
Well, without duplicating what I kind of said in the opening, which are our kind of a big three, we are embarking on a strategic business plan update. I heard Tony talk about his, and some of the words that Tony used are verbatim of the things that we talk about when we talk about our strategic business plan. Does it match our renegotiated consent decree? Does it match our values with our employees? Does it match our values with our customers? So we're not going to do a total redo. We're going to do a refresh, and it is going to concentrate on what Tony said, which is the alignment from top to bottom. We really need to get every layer of our organization connected to our mission. And it'd be interesting, I ask a lot of folks, and I'm getting on a sidebar here, not part of my planned presentation, but I ask a lot of people about what is our mission statement. I don't know what your organization, if you ask your folks, would they know it or not? But that's something that I do a lot. And it is needed in every organization to get from top to bottom connected with the mission. And in order to do that, it's important for us to look at our strategic business plan and then tie it into performance so that they have a stake and they have a reward, honestly, for their efforts in meeting our goals. So I'm glad Tony brought that up. That's one of the things that we're looking at here in the next 12 months. I mentioned bonding, and I'm talking quickly because I want to respect everybody's time. I mentioned bonding earlier. We've got about $100 million in the bank, which is a lot for the size of the utility that we have. However, when we look out to our capital plan over the next 15, 20 years, we have to make a decision whether we want to spend our cash first or spend our debt first. And in the interest rate environment that we have right now, it is more advantageous to go ahead and bond with a strong balance sheet and use low interest money for our next 5 to 7 year plan and keep our powder dry, so to speak, on the balance sheet with our cash to use that cash when interest rates are rising. So we're using our bonding right now as an interest rate hedge. Those are going on the street on November 9th. We're expecting a very favorable response. So that's another area where I think that we can show some value to the customer, that we're thinking long-term about how we're approaching our debt to equity and our debt service coverage ratios. And the last thing I want to mention is that we've created or in the process of creating a mitigation bank. And this stemmed from asset maintenance, actually. So we have a lot of creek crossings, like I'm sure you all do. And what we were finding was our temporary Band-Aid approaches just kept getting swept away by stronger storms, as we've talked about, or stream bank erosion. So a few years back, we actually created a ripple in front of one of our main largest transmission lines across the creek, and realized how well they worked, but also realized the multiple benefits that they perform as far as stream bank stabilization, aquatic lift, and asset stabilization. So we've presented to the Corps that we would like to do more of this. And what we would like to do, since it does meet the qualifications for mitigation credits, that we're going to incorporate this into a lot of our asset maintenance programs, develop a mitigation bank where we can solve all of those multiple problems and then sell credits back into the development community. Because as I mentioned earlier, Amazon in Northern Kentucky has taken away every mitigation credit when they develop the airport site. So, on a dual front, it solves a lot of problems. We're able to perform asset maintenance, address stream bank erosion, increase aquatic lift, and then also help the development community by providing credits into our area where they have availability to buy those credits. So we're excited about that. Looking forward to the long-term implications of the mitigation bank. So those are the near-term stuff that we're looking at right now.
Thanks, Director Cheney, and you've invoked Director Parrott a couple times there, so we're going to turn to him next. And Mr. Parrott, to get the same question, what are your top 3 areas of organizational focus moving forward in late 2021 and into 2022, Mr. Parrott?
Thank you, Reese. First and foremost, as we are going to be coming out of our telework mode on January 10th, we are definitely interested in looking at how we can still have a effective, flexible work policy for our employees going forward. I think we've learned a lot over the last 18 months, and we can do business in multiple ways. And we think that is going to be something that is going to be sort of the utility of the future, and to make sure that we are providing employees an opportunity to thrive, and that next generation worker is going to be much more apt to join utilities if we are flexible and thinking out of the box. A lot of us have I know we have about 25% of our staff that are either at or near retirement. And so we need to be thinking about that utility of the future concept and those future generation workers. And we think a flexible work program is going to be something that is going to enhance that. Secondly, prioritizing our investment in infrastructure. You know, a lot of us are really focused on all the programs, having the diverse portfolio, as Adam mentioned, just to determine, you know, are we using more cash? Are we using low interest revenue? We took advantage of a WIFIA loan this year, 1% money for a $100 million biosolids management project. So we're going to continue to cultivate WIFIA. We were able to get WRDA funding through the Army Corps of Engineers for our flood protection system. And that is about a 65% grant for approximately another $400 million worth of work. So we're going to be really focused in on those relationships and making sure that our amended consent decree, that we prioritize the capital investments based on local needs and priorities under our asset management commitment and our large diameter program under the amended consent decree. Continuing to focus on regionalization, as I mentioned before, and the different public-private partnerships that are going to be a part of that, whether that be in operations. We do have a relationship with Veolia, for example, in one of the systems that we acquired. And we are also expanding the utilization of design build. And in some areas where we're looking, we're going to have to probably look at not only design build, but maybe even design build, own, operate from a financing perspective. And really thinking outside of the box in terms of that future governance for utilities. And then continuing to use our commercial paper program. We've been able to do a lot of capital, and in infusing the commercial paper, we've been able to get money and delay our bond issues. And that commercial paper program has already saved us close to $10 million in financing cost over the last couple of years. So those are sort of the main areas that we're going to be focused on.
Great. Thanks, Director Parrott. Appreciate hearing from Louisville. And I'm last going to turn over to St. Louis and ask Director Holscher this question. And interested to hear what your top 3 areas of organizational focus moving forward into 21 or late 21 into 22.
I got the 3 here. 2 I'm going to touch on quickly. 1 I'll go into a little bit of depth. First of all, I mentioned earlier, just area-wide service coordination with all the other elected entities, 95 of them in the area. So looking forward to participate that. We're, besides Bi-State, which is our transportation entity, we're the only regional entity in the area. So we're a logical thing to help cooperate with that. Biggest thing they're looking at is coordinating building permitting. And so we're an obvious one for that. Looking forward to working with the mayor and county executive on that. Another one that, for those of you who heard me talk before, I complain all the time, is as odd as it seems, MSD has no revenue source to address flooding and erosion due to stormwater. We do our MS4, we can take care of storm sewers and inlets, but we last failed to get a revenue source in April 2019. Probably the one source that would help us, the biggest thing that would help us address climate change. So we're getting ready to, we're talking to the public, getting ready to put that back on our next rate proposal and see if we can't get the public to agree to allow us some funding to assist the municipalities in addressing that. The last one's our disparity study. MSD's had a pretty robust program to make sure we have a good utilization amount in our capital program. We knew coming out of this study, which has been delayed a little bit because of the COVID, was that we could possibly be put in a place where we don't have any legal standing or legal reason to be able to maintain contract goals. In other words, we met all our utilizations, we don't have any disparities. So myself and my manager diversity, Shauna Paredes, were kind of waiting on the edge of our seats to see what the results would come out. So because we're tracking it, we knew our results were good. And when you compare them to what the utilization numbers we were looking at before, we pretty much eliminated all disparities. and probably would make it difficult for us to actually legally use some kind of contract goals in maintaining that program. Fortunately, the program has been so successful that we've had a huge increase in availability of diverse entities, both in the engineering side and the construction side. So that's helped us somewhat. Some of that has actually been covered by the success of our programs. There are some spot areas where some small disparities have shown up. So in the words of the folks who are a consultant who helps us, we're one of the few entities that are actually going to enter kind of a sustainability program and making sure the program works. And so they've been very, very good. I'm not going to be able to tell the last chapter for those from St. Louis who are listening to this. You'll hear about this in February. But right now, putting a program together that's defensible, legally defensible, and allow us to maintain what we're doing. We've done a pretty good job just through leadership, maintaining the goals through engineering. And it looks like we've kind of done a pretty good job of tackling construction, both on the vendor side and the workforce side. Our 30% minority, 7% women goal, we're hitting that. So it's interesting to see what happens. The other thing is, since it's a sustainable goal, it's the kind of thing that will set us up for the next at least 5 years as far as a program. And quite honestly, just as an entity, the one benefit we do have is that our engineering program has already been decreasing and the construction's kind of topping out and is getting ready to go down. So we don't have to worry about availability of resources. It's amazing to see the data and see in a lot of categories, the majority firms are no longer a majority of the firms. So it's just kind of showing that the program's working well. And hopefully we've gotten a lot of support to get there from our contractors, engineers, labor providers. Hopefully they'll take this new program. If we can keep the momentum going and keep everybody hyped up about this, we can keep moving forward. And then all the other items, workforce training comes through our community benefits agreement. It's been in place for the last 8 years, and it has worked very well with the part that MSD is involved in. So we'll see what happens with that. But it's a next step, and the other part is it's something that'll last for a long time. So we're looking forward to presenting that out to the public. That's it. That's it, Reese.
Very cool. Very cool. Thanks, Director Holscher. I appreciate hearing your visions and initiatives looking into 2022. So that takes us to the end of our formal panel with the questions that we had prepared. So we're going to switch now to the last part of our agenda, which is a live Q&A, and we have about 15 minutes left. So we have some time for questions, and to ask a question again, put in the Q&A section, not the chat. Go to the Q&A icon and click on that. It's at the bottom of your screen, and put in a question, and I'll do my best to direct that to the right person, or have maybe a couple of the directors answer it, and we'll answer those live. So now we're on the hot seat a little bit, including myself. So here we go. We do have a couple of questions in the question and answer box already. So I'm going to read that and throw it out to the group. And if anyone panelist definitely wants to chime in on that, give me a wave, raise your hand, or I'll pick on somebody. The first question is, how is each city addressing the unprecedented supply chain related delays and cost escalations with projects currently under construction? So let's stop there. That's a good question there. I see Director Holscher already has his hand up, so thank you. You want to field that? How are you doing with the supply chain delays and cost escalations with projects?
Yeah, let me touch it. I'm not sure what everybody's history is. I've been dealing with these issues since the oil embargo and oil price increases in late 70s and early 80s. So we've seen that. We've seen PVC in the 2000s, steel in the 2000s. As a matter of fact, I just got off the phone yesterday with the head of the Missouri Associated General Contractors. And we both agree this is going to look different, we think, than what those past activities have looked like. When we've tried to address these before, probably except for the oil issue, by the time you try to get addressed in a systemic way, they've gone away. We don't think that's going to happen here. I think I'm hearing numbers from 12 to 18 months by the time the supply chain itself work its way out. And I'm assuming construction, especially heavy materials, And we're seeing some of the impacts on filter replacements on trickling filters, resins for cured in place pipe, ductile iron pipe. So we're starting to see that. Right now, on a case-by-case basis, kind of what we've done, we're meeting with all the contractors to see what we can do to get through it. Sometimes it's if the cost increases are real and we don't need to complete a project fully, it's not driven by a consent decree deadline. Sometimes we're making sure we got proper documentation and we'll get done what we can get done and close it off and wait. So there are some instances, if we can just pay a little bit and get the thing done, we'll do that. Other ones, contractors have agreed with us. They've got other stuff going on. They'll pull off if we have the schedule ability for the 6 to 9 months. So, and those are probably the typical things you see. There's two components to this. There's price, there's schedule, and sometimes it's schedule and price. So we'll see what's going on. Talked with AGC. AGC itself, I think, is starting to push a methodology for putting a price escalator clause in some of their contracts. They've given us that. I'm going to get it to our engineering department. And at least for us, we're going to have our first discussions around this topic with all of our contractors and their organizations coming in early November. So right now we're doing it on case by case, but it looks bigger and different. So I think, it's not like the past where we're going to spend a month working on it and then the problem goes away. I got a feeling we're probably going to have to come to fruition in this particular instance.
Great, thank you. Anybody else want to chime in and share Mr. Trifus?
I was first surprised to hear that Brian, so youthful, has been around since the 70s and 80s. So that was some exciting news. We work with our supply chain, so we've been pre-purchasing a lot of material. We generally had established relationships with area suppliers where for our contractors, most of our ductile iron and polyethylene pipe, we purchase direct and then we work with our contractor to install those. For some of our programs, we have purchased up to a year in advance on some of those materials just to try to maintain an inventory for critical projects, critical capital projects that we know are upcoming. And much like Brian said, then we're working with our vendors and other partners as projects progress, to prioritize, making sure we do have, I guess, for lack of a better word, materials on the shelf to deal with kind of critical mass or critical items that might come up throughout the next year.
Great. There's a second half to this question that is more focused on new projects that are in either the bidding or the proposal stage. And does anyone have anecdotes or experience to share related to how you're handling the cost escalations or other supply chain problems early in the bidding process or in the proposal stage? Dr. Holster, I'll go to you again.
Reese, and maybe I wasn't clear. So that's the point of meeting in November, is to do that. And actually, it's the first time the contractors themselves are much better organized to have that discussion, putting something forward. Now, that's on construction delivery. There's a whole other issue with I think like everybody else experienced things such as operating materials and chemicals and stuff like that. We're thinking those through as well. So haven't thought much about the delivery side. The search and find, some of the things John Trifus was talking about, that's a little easier for us to do as long as you're aggressive about it and upfront about it on operating chemicals and equipment and materials. The contracting side, it looks like it's going to be a little bit different. We are starting a $300 million project to replace our incinerators coming up here pretty soon, and going to go out in the street for a design build contract. Obviously, that's something we're worried about how that might impact that. So I think it's process becomes important. If you're going to figure out how to do it, my past experience is not only figure out how to reimburse them if something goes up and you think that's a fair way, find out how you can be reimbursed when the numbers start going the other way. And it's like every other contract, you got to make sure you understand the consequences of what you try and put in place to solve a problem.
Hey, thanks for jumping in. Can I pose this out to Columbus? Administrator Newsom, any thoughts to share about dealing with the supply chain issues, construction, either current construction or future construction that you're anticipating. I know a lot of our cities have major consent decree work coming up with $1 million price tags. So any thoughts on supply chain problems that you're seeing in Columbus?
Yeah, I'd say particularly on the future, we're adjusting our budgets, obviously, to accommodate that. Then similar to what Brian said, consent order comes first. So there's some projects that may not be as they're critical, but they're not consent order driven, right? So we've been adjusting our budgets, looking at how that impacts rates. You know, we want to keep rates affordable as well. So there's been some projects we've had to move out, excuse me, in our capital plan to accommodate for those potential cost increases. I'll say on the cogen project that I talked about earlier as well, we actually put a particular line item and we put a price point in for that equipment there. So all the bidders had the same basis of cost. We worked with the manufacturer on that to come with that basis of cost. Now that doesn't mean the delivery is the same, but we at least allowed that. We set that price point on that equipment so that, again, all the bidders were consistent from that standpoint.
Great. Thanks for sharing. So I think we've hit that topic pretty good. We do have a second question, totally different. So wrap your brain around this new question. Are any cities using the RPA, robotic process automation, to reduce manual processes? Several of you talked about some of the innovations that you've been putting in place from COVID or through the pandemic, and also some of your initiatives moving forward. Maybe you had already started going paperless or touchless, and then that really was accelerated. But are any cities using robotic process automation or RPA to reduce manual processes? And maybe we don't know what that is. I think St. Louis, I know this is something they're into, and actually in Cincinnati, we're trying to do a similar thing. But Director Holster, go ahead. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
So for full disclosure, the question came from my executive assistant, so I'll let you know. What we're doing is, and a lot of it's around the billing and account analysis that we regularly go through, you know, your checks, your QA, QC. We've put the robotic systems in there to do that. That prevents us from having to do it by hand. Does a really good job of giving us an exception report for us to look for things where accounts or billing may be out of bounds. The second place we're doing this, I don't know if you guys have this issue, is the massive number of underground utility relocates that come from anybody whenever they're doing any kind of work. And we found that those systems and those robotic systems can be set up to really do that first pass analysis. And it really takes away a lot of manpower that's required to go through each one of these one by one and see if you really do have something. And they just kind of automatically go through and do that. So we started working on it. It saves money when you're doing it. Hopefully it helps you catch mistakes and catch things much more quickly. So those are the two. I know they're thinking of new ones all the time, and I'm probably a week behind, but those are the two that we've at least presented to the whole organization as to what we're doing so far.
Can you share just a little bit more explanation of what it is? Because yeah, I think others would, and myself included, would benefit from. What is robotic process automation?
So
you got robots?
asking,
are these like things you've got robots built, or what is this?
You're really asking the wrong person. So
all right.
I know they set something up, it's programmable, it learns, and they simply run a database through under certain parameters, and then it learns how it's actually somehow it learns what it's seeing, what it's looking for, what's an important thing. So I'm assuming that's probably a whole conference worth of discussion sometime as to how that really works. But that's way
sure.
I don't have the internet at home, so this is way beyond anything I've got. So
no, that's very impressive. I didn't mean to put you on a spot there, but that is helpful. So it's not a robot itself running around the halls of Metropolitan St. Louis. It's programming that looks at various data sources, maybe or coding to automate some of those processes. And maybe that's something that other utilities can could dig into, maybe learn a little bit more about. I'd be interested in doing that in Cincinnati as well, to see if we can't automate some of our processes. So that gets us through the Q&A that has been submitted. We are pretty close to on time here, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. First of all, I'd like to thank all of our panelists very much. It's been very helpful to hear about your experiences, your perspective, and especially your visions for the future. You know, we've all been struggling with the pandemic, and it's clear that none of us let that crisis go to waste. We've learned a lot, and hopefully we can teach each other things from that. That's why we do this conference. So thank you for all of the directors, administrators for taking the time to provide those updates and give us some insights. Second, I would like to thank all the people who helped put this webinar together. It was a team effort, and there's a lot of people who work behind the scenes at all of these various utilities to pull this off. And I can't name them all because we'd be here for another half hour. But thank you all for all the people who made this happen. I think this was very instructive, and hey, it was the first time we did a virtual 5 Cities Plus conference. So you pulled off first of its kind. And not lastly, but next I want to thank all of you who attended this webinar. It's great to be able to share ideas, and hopefully this spurred some conversations that could happen, in between our utilities, and some knowledge sharing. I hope you found this interesting. I think the directors, the administrators provided us some really good things to think about. And for those who are interested in seeing it again, because first time wasn't good enough, there will be a link sent out to this. This session was recorded, so that will be sent out following probably give us a little bit. We'll turn it around probably in the next week. So that's it. Thank you for participating, and we hope to see you in person at the 2022 5 Cities Plus Conference in Cincinnati next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.